I'm a successful mother of a set of twins, a boy named Maris and a girl named Marissa. I've been at the office all day, but I could not focus because of a disturbing text which my husband Tim sent me. He said his mother wanted to come and visit. I did not reply to the text, but he would get my reply once I get home, and it would be a no for me. I could likely mistake me for a bad person, so I think it would be best if I took you back to where it all started. Tim and I have known each other for years. I was not just known by him alone, but by his entire family. He used to have a younger sister and a father. For some reason, the father decided that he was done with the marriage and wanted out. His mother took the divorce as best as she could, but steadily grew worse thereafter. Tim's only sister went wild and overdosed on drugs within a short while. You see, her death was a terrible blow to Tim's mom. She was so shattered on the inside that she went for therapy. She turned out fine, though, but she decided to hold tightly to her son, the only thing that she had left from a failed marriage and a broken home. I tried to be there for her and acted like a daughter in ways that I've never ever done for my mom. A few years rolled by and Tim's mother was doing very much okay, although each time she wanted something from her son, she would try to emotionally blackmail him, saying that he was now treating her worse than his father had. The time came when Tim and I felt it was time to settle down. See, I was an agent in a marketing firm while I sought better opportunities. Tim, on the other hand, was a software engineer who freelanced for different brands across the globe, and fate seemed to be in support of our union as I received a lucrative job offer from a firm in another state. The job came with a house and an official car. Tim and I agreed that I would take the job and we would move over to the other state once we were married. We then decided that it was time to tell his mother about our desires to get married. Tim lived with her at the time, so I just went over to the house on a weekend so we could talk it over for lunch. Tim was the one who broke the news to her. He told her that he had proposed to me and I said yes. His mother was very much elated. She said that she could think of no better person more suited for her son. She said if we had informed her on time, she would have prepared something better to match the occasion. See, Tim's mom just went on to sing my praise about how she felt her son would be in safe hands because she had watched me closely over the years and could simply vouch for me. I felt relieved that she had received these news joyfully, so I began to tell her about the plans that we had to execute before and after the wedding. The problem came when I mentioned that I'd gotten a job offer in another state, and we would be moving once we were added. Well, Tim's mother, her facial expression turned from happy to sad, and you could tell that there was a problem. She asked if it was a must that I had to take the job. Well, I told her, you don't understand. This is like a breakthrough in my career, and I never expected to land such an amazing job, even in my wildest imaginations. I was thinking that she would resume her happiness for me, but she just immediately said something that shocked me. The shock of Tim as well, that I could not take the job. Well, we were curious to know why she would make such a statement, and she said that the job was going to impede my marriage and the family. Well, I knew her marital failure, so I tried to assess what she said, but it did not make any sense. Not even her son Tim could make sense of it. I said to her that we've talked about it, and we felt that, this is probably just the best idea. Especially since Tim was a freelancer who could work from anywhere in the world. Tim's mother immediately flared up. She said that I was one of those girls who would come into the life of a man just to tear him away from his own family. I cannot express how shocked Tim and I were. I mean, how could his mom, who had known me all these years and was even vouching for me just moments before then, now call me one of those girls? We both tried to make her understand that there's no mission to tear her away from Tim, but she was adamant. She told Tim to look for some other lady to marry as she would not give her consent to this union. Well, what happened to not knowing a better person for her son? I wanted to speak further, but she was already irritated by my presence, and she asked him to, quote, get this manipulative thing out of her house. And that was how what began as a beautiful evening ended up in a rough note. I left the house, and Tim asked that we give his mother some time to cool off before we raised the issue again. I loved him, but there was no way I was going to give such an opportunity up because of his mom. Good thing that he did not even ask me to consider it, because that would have been the end. It did not matter to me that we were already engaged. I was not ready to get married to somebody who would choose his mother over his wife. So Tim and I decided to sit with his mom. After a month, before we started to talk, she told us that if the reason we had come to meet her was about the same issue of marriage, then her stance had not changed. She started to say that after her husband had abandoned her and she had lost her daughter, I was still willing to take the only consolation that she had in life away from her. I wanted to speak, but she shut me up. So Tim had to speak up for the both of us, and he told his mom that the intention was not to abandon me. He promised that she would be well taken care of. His mother remained stubborn, and I wondered why a mom who was supposed to be canvassing for the progress of her son was the very one standing in the way of his success. She then gave another condition that would make her basically give consent to the union. She said that she would move in with us to the other state once we were wedded. It was a no for me, but I did not voice it out. I just waited to see Tim's reaction. So Tim immediately stood up and told his mother that we were getting married with or without her approval. So he grabs my hand and we walked out of there together. We began to plan the wedding, and Tim visited his mother alone, just to tell her that the wedding date has been set. According to him, he had told her the date and given the wedding card, but she tore it to shreds and told him that she would rather die than step her foot there. Well, we didn't care. We went ahead with our plans and looked forward to the day of the wedding. The wedding day finally arrived, and we had guests from all over. Everybody was present except for Tim's mom. I was about to walk down the aisle when Tim immediately gets a text from one of his mother's close friends. The text claimed that his mother was on her way to the wedding venue when the vehicle that was conveying her collided with a truck, and a ghastly accident occurred. She claimed that Tim's mom had been admitted to the popular hospital, which she visited, and she was fighting for her dear life. Tim called my attention to the text, and we decided to put the whole thing on pause. We informed the guests that the wedding would commence in a few more minutes, but we needed to attend to an emergency. Tim and I rushed to the hospital. He was in his tuxedo while I was in my wedding gown. We met the doctor at the hospital entrance, and he had been the family doctor for years and knew both Tim and his mother very well. The doctor was startled to see the bride and groom in the hospital. Before he could say anything, Tim asked if his mother was going to make it. Well, the doctor was very surprised. He said that Tim's mom was perfectly okay and noted that she had come for her routine checkup with her friend, and when questioned her as to why she was not at the wedding event, she claimed that the wedding had been shifted. Well, my blood began to boil. Tim asked the doctor where his mother was, and he asked one of the nurses to take us to the room now. So we get there and found his mom chatting and laughing with her friend. They took one look at us, and we entered, and they busted out laughing. They knew exactly what they did. Tim began shouting at his mom for concocting such a lie, and even if I could not take it, I raised my voice at her, and if she did not want to attend the wedding, fine, but why did she have to just not leave us in peace? So, she looked at Tim and questioned why he stood there and let the woman he wanted to marry insult his mom. Tim was not okay in any of it. He was already fed up, and the embarrassment was massive. He told his mother that we were going to get married and we would equally get out of her life. So we went back to the wedding venue, but most of the guests had left. Our wedding turned out to be less colorful than we had wanted, and I still blame his mother for that to this day. We moved over to another state after our marriage, and his mother never got in touch with us. I got pregnant shortly after, and Tim thought it was best that his mother would accept me, especially now that she would soon become a grandma. I was still offended by her for the whole wedding drama, but I did understand that it was not easy for Tim to be separated from his mom. So I asked him to reach out to her and break the news. Tim called his mother, and I was with him, and he put the phone on loudspeaker so I could equally hear what she was saying. She did not sound happy to hear his voice, and he went ahead to tell me that I was pregnant, and the scan showed that she would soon be the grandmother of twin children. Tim's mother has got a black heart, and I'm not sorry to say so. She just hissed and said that I could go to hell before going to terminate the call. This was the height of it. I decided that I would not have anything to do with her again, so we kept our distance. Now, you can understand why the text which I received from my husband has evoked my anger. It's been 13 years now, and I have a set of twins who have never set eyes on their grandma. I would love to keep it that way, and I'm about to leave for the house, and I would ask Tim to tell his mom to go to hell. Update number 1. My life had known peace until now when my mother-in-law, who had not been a part of it, decided to show up. Remember I told you in my last update that I was going to tell my husband to ask his mom to go to hell? Well, I did. I got home that day and Tim had prepared a wonderful dinner. To start with, he's been a supportive husband and I did not take him for granted. We've not had any reason to hire a nanny or a house cleaner ever since we got married, as Tim, who had been working from home, did most of the duties. I could perceive from the aroma of the meal that it would live up to the expectation of tastiness, but I was not interested. Yet. There were issues that we needed to talk about and trash out. So I asked him about the text that he had sent me earlier on, and he said that his mother had reached out to him out of the blue and wanted to come to visit, her grandchildren especially. The moment Tim said that, I acted like I was happy, like I did not bear any grudge on the inside against her. I noted that it would be nice to have her around as it's been ages. So I asked him to call her via his cell so I could speak with her and know when she, intended to come. Tim, who was happy that I was eager to have his mother around, quickly pulled out his phone and called his mom. He told her that I had heard and I was happy about her intending to visit and even wanted to speak with her. Tim handed the phone over to me and my mother-in-law began to talk about how long it's been since she saw. I kept quiet and allowed her to keep yapping about how it was going to be nice to spend time with her grandchildren, and after she was done, I dropped the bombshell. I told her that no reunion of any sort was going to take place between her and my kids. I then told her to go to hell before terminating the phone call. Tim was surprised at me and very mad. He was not happy that I talked to his mother like that, but I didn't care. He asked me why I was so disrespectful to her, and I just responded by saying that he was supposed to ask her why she wanted to come and visit after all these years. Besides, I had told her to go to the same hell that she had directed me to go to years ago. Tim noted his disappointment at the fact that I was still nursing the anger of what his mother has done years ago, but why would I not? She had stood in the way of our marriage and asked him to get married to somebody else if I did not give up my job. She had almost ruined my wedding day with her drama and cut herself out from us when Tim told her that I was pregnant. My husband demanded that I call his mom and apologize to her for the, quote, disrespectful manner that I'd spoken to her. So I looked at Tim and said that I would rather attempt swallowing a whale than do what she was asking me to do. Anyways, I did not just stop there. I went ahead to tell Tim that I would have his mother arrested if she ever stepped foot inside of my home. I was wrong to have made that statement because it bruised Tim's ego as a man. He was like, "Oh, I see, you're home," and walked out of the door. Tim did not come back home that night, and you know what? I do feel really bad. I stayed up all night, calling his line, but he simply would not answer. So I called in work the next morning to inform them that I would not be coming as I had an emergency. I was all at home after my kids had left for school, and that's when my husband walked inside the house. I immediately began to apologize to Tim for the very, very words that I said to him and his mom. I was not really ready for what I had said to his mom. I didn't mean it, really, because she deserved it, yes, but then if Tim was going to forgive me, I had to apologize to his mom. I told him that whatever I had belonged to the both of us, and it was wrong to have regarded the house as simply my house, simply because it was, me gotten the job here. I told Tim, however, that the reason I did not want his mother coming here was because she could show up and attempt to tear us apart again. She's done this before. Tim noted that people do change, and maybe the fact that there was a distance between his mother and us has gotten her to realize that she needed us in her life. So, I was not convinced that his mother had changed, and neither had I truly forgiven her. All the same, I asked him to tell her that she was free to come whenever she wanted. Tim notified his mother, and I apologized to her over the phone. She would be coming to the house in 3 days' time. I honestly don't know how it's going to turn out, but one thing is for certain. If she tries to act funny or in any way tries to threaten the peace that my family has enjoyed all the while, you know what? She will leave. Update number 2. Hey, my mother-in-law is bad luck, and I think that it's the best way to say it. That need something else I need to tell y'all. I'm currently at loggerheads with my kids, and though she's not responsible in any way, it just happens that my kids are becoming distant and arrogant at the very moment she shows up in our life. After we had settled our differences and expectations of her arrival were in place, I began to prepare the minds of my children that we were going to have their grandmother as a guest for about 2 weeks. Naturally, my kids were curious because they've never met her. My mother-in-law shows up at the house on a weekend. We had prepared the guest room for her and put measures into place to make sure that she was comfortable. So the taxi dropped her in front of her house, and both Tim and I went to help with the luggage. I greeted her, but my attention had shifted from her to the luggage, which the driver was bringing out. My jaw almost dropped because if you saw them, you would think that she had come to stay for life. I didn't say anything. I already had it in my mind that she was going to stay for 2 weeks and that's it. And, it was going to be very uncomfortable and unpleasant for me. I decided I would endure just for the peace to reign in my marriage. My mother-in-law immediately reached for her grandbabies and began to catch up on lost time right there. She showed that she meant business when she got them an iPad, which she bought for them, and that was enough to win their love, and I did my best to avoid being alone with her as much as I could. I even went as far as avoiding any conversation with her so I would not get incited to violence. It took forever for 2 weeks to come and go, but it finally did. We were having lunch on a Sunday, which was 2 days before my mother-in-law's departure, when my kids asked if she could stay longer. My mother-in-law looked at my children and said that she would love to, but she already told me and Tim that she would just be spending 14 days with us, and would not want them to be uncomfortable for her overstaying. She was playing the game, and I knew it. The implication of her statement meant that, her staying a little more at the house rested on my husband and me solely to agreeing on it. So my kids immediately began to plead with us to let Grammy stay longer. My husband agreed, and I did not want to look like a mother who was against the happiness of her kids. So I bit my tongue and I smiled, and said it was perfectly okay if Grandma stayed. My mother-in-law noted that she was going to be staying for another 2 weeks, and I just sighed on the inside. So 2 weeks come and go. I booked a train ticket for my mother-in-law to get back to where she had come from. We were having dinner on the eve of her departure when I told her about it. My kids were in their room, so they could not make the same request for her to stay, and even if they did, I would tell them that I was sure Grandma had other issues to attend back at home, in the state where she lived. She thanked me for the train ticket, but I felt that she was not very happy about it. So my husband then went on to say that he wanted to make a very important announcement. He said that he has gotten a contract with a firm in a state quite far from where we stay. The job was to come and take some of their staff, some software developer courses, for about 3 months' time. He apologized for not telling me beforehand, but said that he wanted it to come as a surprise. Tim jokingly said that he knew 3 months was a long time to be away from the children, and he was sorry. His mother immediately just opinioned that we would be okay because she would be staying back to take care of the kids in the house, while I was busy with work. Tim immediately said that's a great idea and asked what I thought about it, and I acted like it was such a relief. However, I have paid someone else $1 million if I would have had it to come do some chores for me rather than spending 3 months with her. So, Tim traveled for the job, and I began to adjust to living with my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law was no longer the issue, it was my kids. They began to act distant and somewhat stubborn, and they chose to spend time with their grandmother rather than with me. I'm not against them spending time with her, but it was likely that they did not want me around. If I came back from work and wanted to check on them to see how they were doing, they would just answer with a word like, fine, or okay. I tried to overlook it, but the situation was staring me right in the face. Things got out of hand yesterday evening when I came back from work. My kids were seated in the parlor with their grandmother when I walked in. They both said a lousy good evening and just redirected their attention somewhere else. It was disrespectful and I was not going to let it slide. So I asked them what the issue was, but my two kids acted like they didn't hear me. I raised my voice, and that's when my son, Maris, responded by saying that I should stop acting like I care. They both stood up and walked out on me. I wanted to go after them, and God knows what the outcome would have been, but my mother-in-law intervened and said that I should let her handle the matter. I seriously don't know what to do. Update number 3. Hey guys, would you believe me if I told you that my mother-in-law was behind the recent display of stubbornness from my children? Well, she is. My relationship with my kids did not improve even after she had asked me to let her handle the matter and get them straightened out. So I got back home yesterday and the parlor door was open. I didn't go out with my car as it's broken down, and I had dropped it off at the mechanic so nobody heard me coming home. I got into the house and there was nobody in the parlor. I went to my kids' room to check up on them before my attention was diverted toward the call my mother-in-law was making to somebody on the phone. Her room was opposite of the children's, so rather than knock, I just stayed to listen. Eavesdrop, and the things I heard proved that Tim was wrong. When he said people change because his mother was still the same manipulative person that she's ever been, I listened as she told the person on the other end that she had cunningly executed her well-thought-out plan to stay at our place for a while until she had raised enough money to rent a place of her own. I did hear her explanation how she had lost her house, but, well, that was not important. The next thing she said was, I heard her tell the caller that her luck had almost run out when I got her a train ticket, and she was lucky her son got an outside job, which she now used as an excuse to stay. Everything made perfect sense as I listened to my mother-in-law. I walked back to the parlor and began to call out her name like I was just coming back and had not heard all that she said. She came and pretended like all was well, so I wanted to call Tim that night, but I did not want to risk his mother learning. I knew her trickery, so I decided to do it today at work. I call up Tim this morning as soon as I get to work and tell him everything. Well, he was shocked, he was disappointed, but he, however, asked me to ignore her till he gets back. He said he would give her some money to rent a place and have her move out of our home. He asked how the kids were doing, and I told him the situation of things, and I noted I did not want to tell him about it since, it's gone beyond my control. Tim asked that I call him during the weekend so he could speak with him. I just wanted to see if I could mend things before the weekend, so I left work this afternoon and went straight to my children's school during their lunch hour. I was at the principal's office and I told him that I would have to leave with my daughter as it was an emergency, so he sent for her. The plan was to speak separately with him because that was the only way I stood a chance of them getting to talk to me. I left school with my daughter and took her to a park, where she sat down to talk, and I began by reassuring her of my love for both her and her brother, before asking her to open up to me if I had hurt them in any way. Marissa looked at me and asked if I and her father were planning to get divorced. Well, I was shocked and asked where the heck she gotten so much misleading information. She went further to ask if the job that her father had said that he was at was only an excuse to move out because I was making it difficult for him. I immediately debunked any impression that she had said about me and the father separating, and that was when she told me that Grammy had told her that, and Maris, that I wanted to take them away from her dad. Wow, I listened as my daughter told me chilling lie after lie that my mother-in-law had sold to her, and I was stunned and mad at my mother-in-law. All of that would not have happened if Tim had just kept his mother at bay, so I immediately pulled out my phone and called him. I had Marissa repeat every single thing that she told me, and Tim was shocked. He reassured her that we are not going to divorce, and his mother was the one who wanted to tear our family apart. Tim asked me to immediately call the police and have them throw his mother out. After which I was, about to get a restraining order after that. I took my daughter back to school and asked her to tell her brother the truth which she had learned. I promised to come pick up the both of them once school was over. So I went straight to the house with the police, and my mother-in-law was so surprised. I'd already opened up a case against her at the station, but the plan was not prosecute her for manipulating my family. The plan was just to disgracefully take her to the station, after which all charges would be dropped, even though she would no longer be able to come close to us again. So she asked what the issue was, and I just pointed at her and notified the cops. "She's the one." She told the cops as they dragged her away that they were probably making a mistake. They took her to the station and I joined them. I told her that we're aware that she lost her house, manipulated her way into our home, and was manipulating my children against me by selling all these slanderous lies. And a fact that my children's testimony would support it. I could build a case of slander, and my mother-in-law reacted by saying that her son would never support that, but Tim had already asked me to call him when we were at the police station so he could speak with her. The phone was on the speaker at the moment that she heard his voice. She starts asking him to come to her aid as his wife wanted to kill her. To her disappointment, Tim told her that he was the one who had ordered me to take this line of action, which I did. And though we did not want to be pressing charges, we were going to get a restraining order against her, and she was to never show up in our lives again. Well, obviously, she attempted to play the emotional mind game by faking crocodile tears, telling Tim that he was now abandoning her just like his father did, but Tim cut the phone call short. My mother-in-law was later released, and she left us alone for good. So I'm currently with my kids, and it's going to be a while before Tim comes home, but I'm not worried because things are going well.